I'm at a title company and I'm about to interview a real-life escrow officer. So whether you're a buyer or seller, you need to watch this. So as an agent, I'm coming to the title company and I'm representing a buyer or seller. And so in this process, who does the title company represent?
Well, the title company doesn't represent anybody. As an escrow agent, we are a neutral third party to the transaction, and we simply facilitate the closing, handle the closing documents themselves, handle the monies, but we don't participate in contract negotiations or any of the pitfalls that can come with the negotiation process. Ultimately, as I mentioned before, we're an insurance company, and we don't participate in representation of either side of a transaction.
And that's great because we got legalities, you've got money. You really want somebody who can be impartial in a third party.
That's exactly right. And ultimately, there is a lot of emotion involved in a real estate transaction, which we don't participate in, but we do see it oftentimes. Let's say you have a seller that perhaps they're selling their family home that they've been in for 30 or 40 or more years. There's a lot of emotion that's attached to that sale. There's also a lot of emotion that's attached on the buyer side as well, especially if they're a first-time home buyer, or perhaps maybe they've purchased a property before, but the property that they're purchasing is their dream home. So there can be a lot of emotion involved in that. And you couple that with tens of thousands of dollars that are changing hands between the parties, and things can get a little escalated sometimes.
Sometimes millions of dollars.
Sometimes millions of dollars even, that's true. But yeah, there's a little bit of emotion that is attached to that, and we don't participate in that. We just try to facilitate the transaction and make it as smooth a process as possible for all the parties involved.
No drama allowed here.
No drama allowed.
Okay. The title company is not representing seller or buyer, but can usually in a contract, somebody who's listing their house pick who they want for their title company.
That's a double-edged sword. My personal thought is that it is the party that is paying for the title policy that gets to choose. Mm-hmm. The other side of that is that it's the party that is the beneficiary of the policy that gets to choose. So I think ultimately it is whomever pays for the policy mm-hmm. gets to choose, but that's always a cause for contention, or sometimes can be a cause mm-hmm. for contention. There are many agents that have business relationships with one title company over another. Sometimes there are buyers or sellers that maybe have a history of using one title company mm-hmm. over another, and certainly we like that because we do like the repeat business. We like to do business with people that like to do business with us.
What are some common things that will cause a closing to be delayed or even canceled?
Well, while we don't want closings to be canceled at all, that's not good for anyone, there are all kinds of things that can cause delays in a closing. Simple things and complicated things. Things like terms of the contract not having been met, either at all or yet. Repairs or treatments that are delayed for whatever reason. In the discovery process, if the buyers are having inspections done and perhaps there is a repair that's needed that was not anticipated, and maybe there's a scheduling issue with the repair company, or sometimes even weather-related delays for things like treatment of wood-destroying insects or extreme cold, as we've seen in the last couple of years, that can cause delays. Most often the delays, though, are caused by the lender. Processing of the loan. A lot of times buyers don't get all of the required documents to the lender for processing timely. Unfortunately, sometimes buyers are not able to obtain financing, so that can actually cause a cancellation of a contract. Then you have more complicated issues, things like maybe a party to the transaction passes away, and then that has to be dealt with. Or problems with the chain of title. Maybe not the current owners that have passed, but maybe a predecessor in title that has passed, and incomplete probates or no probate at all is something that we discover in the research of the property. So all of these different kinds of things can cause delays in closing.
We want everyone to get to the finish line, but in your experience, have you actually seen a deal fall through right at the closing table?
You know, any number of things can happen at the closing table. And while it's not something that I've personally experienced, I do know that it does happen. It's not pleasant for anybody involved, but it does happen.
Okay. Patricia, so as an agent, I'm making sure that my client is, staying on the timelines that we have. We're trying to help our clients along the way, and trying to make it easier for them, so they don't have to worry about the process. But how can clients themselves check on their agent or help along the process, make sure that everything is going smoothly so they get to that closing and there's no surprises, because we don't want any surprises.
You don't want any surprises at the closing table. Well, my best advice is for a buyer, let's say, is be an informed buyer. The beginning of the contract term, the buyer has the opportunity to purchase an option period. And during that option period, the buyer has the unrestricted right to terminate the contract. But also during that period of time, that's when the buyer has the opportunity to conduct inspections. And my thought is that the more the buyer knows about the property, the better. So that way there are no surprises once they get into the property. Also, do the due diligence. If the buyer is using the lender is going to have certain requirements in order to give that loan. So make sure that you get everything into the lender as quickly as possible. And there's a laundry list of items that a lender needs in order to provide funds for a closing. But certainly get them in timely, and your loan will be approved a lot quicker. Also, don't ever be afraid to ask questions, whether you are the seller or the buyer to a transaction. Obviously, the buyers kind of have a little bit more that they're going to need to know throughout the process, but don't be afraid to ask the question. The more you know, the better off you are, and the fewer the surprises are. Same thing with being a seller, especially if you've never sold a piece of real estate before. That's what you, the agent, is there for, to help facilitate, to provide your knowledge, your expertise, to help the parties cross the finish line. We, of course, want that to happen timely as well for all parties that are involved.
In the title company, we're talking about, lots of money, legalities. I mean, things have to be precise and by the book. And what people need to realize at title companies, there's a lot of really smart people working here. I've worked with gifted and talented students for many, many years. I know high intelligence when I see it. And let me tell you, there's a lot of high intelligence in title companies, especially among yourself.
Well, thank you very much. I appreciate that. There is a lot that goes into the closing process. And as with any industry, there are always changes. Regulations change, guidelines change, laws change, and we do have to be current on those kinds of things, which is part of why we take as many continuing education hours as we do. But really, patience is the key in this industry. Whether you are the seller, whether you're the buyer, if you're an agent or the lender, And knowing as much about the process along the way is helpful. Knowledge is key in this industry, and obviously we want to be your title company, so we do stay up to date on these kinds of things.
Well, Patricia, I really want to thank you for your time today, and I hope it helped our viewers out there, buyers and sellers, people who want to refinance, to understand the process of going to a closing, going to a title company. You got to realize that buyers and sellers, that you've got agents, you've got lenders, you've got title company people, all here to help you along the way to buying that house or selling that house. And speaking of help, remember, I always say, my main commission is helping you.